Hello, folks. Thanks for tuning in again to the Britt Kanawha West Hancock Athletics Podcast. Dan Crawl here. I'm excited because this is episode 100. I was just telling my guest, Scott VanDusseldorp, that you see on the screen here with me. I'm like, I can't believe we got to this point, episode 100. But here we are. So thanks for tuning in and thanks for being such supportive listeners and watchers throughout these last couple of years. Like I just said, my guest today is Scott VanDusseldorp. He has a snow day. I have a snow day, so we decided let's record this thing a little early and give you all out there something to do while you're kind of trapped in the house. How you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. Like I said, we're not at school, so I know we just got back from Christmas break, but as a teacher, sometimes you just welcome a snow day. So
Absolutely.
Scott was a standout athlete at Britt and West Hancock in the late 80s, early 90s, considered one of the best defensive players in school history on the football team. So I'm excited to talk to Scott about a lot of things today. But before that, like I said, it is episode 100. I started this podcast, got the idea for it in late 2020 and decided in early January of 2021 to give it a whirl. Decided to have Kevin Sanger be my first guest so we could talk about his parents. And I honestly never thought this thing would still go. My wife always joked with me, and she's like, "Is anyone actually going to watch this and listen to this?" And I was like, "Well, we'll find out." Never would have thought it would turn into what it's turned into, and honestly, that's not because of me. It's because of the great guests I've had at places like Britt Kanawha and West Hancock. I have hundreds of possibilities for guests, and those are the people that are making this continue to go. And then the sponsors that you see on my screen, along with had up to 100 different sponsors doing this podcast. They're the ones that really make this continue to go and grow because they're the ones giving money to the Sanger Legacy Fund. And speaking of the Legacy Fund, I feel like I don't do this enough justice in explaining the Sanger Legacy Fund, so I'm going to explain that here for a little bit. The Legacy Fund was created in 2019 to honor Bob and Linda Sanger. The money brought in to the Legacy Fund goes back to the schools and the communities that Bob and Linda were and are very passionate about. We've helped pay for championship plaques, rings, and footballs for the football teams. And of course, everyone out there knows we've won 3 of the last 5 championships in Class A, and the state only provides X amount of those things for players and coaches. And so we want everyone to get one. Those aren't cheap. We make sure everybody gets what they get from what they deserve from winning a championship. We give out scholarships every year to graduating seniors. We've helped with the high school baseball and softball renovations. We've helped with the golf shed renovations at the Britt Golf Course. The Little League programs, youth football programs, and basketball programs have asked for help, and we've helped them in various ways financially. The West Hancock Alumni Association, we've helped them give out scholarships during the COVID year. We've given money to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society in honor of Bob Sanger. We've helped pay for the new football and track scoreboards. We've given to the music and drama departments, and there's other things as well. That's just quite a list of things. With all that being said, the Legacy Fund does a lot of good things for a lot of people, gives back to the school, gives back to the community. So I'm going to start a little giving drive today. Today's January 9th, 2024, and I'm going to have it go till March 1st. Obviously, this involves all of you out there. I'm asking for your help here. The goal, I want to raise $5,000 by March 1st. And since this is episode 100, I wanted to do things in increments of 100. If you can give $100 to the Legacy Fund, please do so. It can be straight up $100, 4 payments of $25, 2 payments of $50, 10 payments of $10. I don't care. But if you feel inclined to give back to the Legacy Fund that has Bob and Linda's name on it, that'd be awesome. You can do that in the form of sponsoring the podcast. I have 18 sponsors today, and that's about my average. I need sponsors to continue this thing going. They're $10 per episode. You want to do 10 episodes, that's $100. Again, my goal is to raise $5,000 between now and March 1st. I'd like to have you let me know if you do, because I want to see how close we get to that goal. So if you guys could do that, that'd be great. I think that'd be a great way to give back to our communities and our schools and the kids that work so hard. They deserve our financial help. So speaking of sponsors, there's 18 of them on the screen. You can look there. I got Kelly Real Estate, Daniel's Auto Collision in Charles City, White Barn Picket Fence, the Britt Car Truck Bike and Tractor Night Cruise, Carlson Drainage, Lifetime Nut Covers, Doug and Kathy Zool, Swenson's Do It Best Hardware, Ewing Funeral Home and Monument Company, Nick Schmidt, Jeff and Becky Nielsen, Triple B's Tenderloins and Food, Miller and Sons Golf Cars, Window World of Mason City, Trilson Auto Parts, Levi Don Trucking, the Britt Vet Clinic, and the Britt Food Center. So those people gave $10 at least for this episode. That's about a $200 some episode here. So all that money again is going back to the Legacy Fund. And one other thing that the Legacy Fund helps provide financial assistance for is the West Hancock Hall of Fame. If you've seen online in the last couple weeks, I have announced who is going into the class of 2024, and we have a pretty good group of inductees. We have the 1978 and 79 Kanawha boys track teams, the 1961 and 62 Britt boys wrestling teams, the 1956 Britt wrestling team, and then we have John Weiland, Mark Stevenson, Jeff Stevenson, and Linda Sanger is going to be a Hall of Famer this year in 2024. And we give money to help make that possible and run that Hall of Fame event. Pretty excited about that group, especially excited to get Mrs. Sanger into the Hall of Fame this year. She's one of, if not the most deserving people that there is out there. So yeah, episode 150 episodes ago, I always highlight that episode. That would have been Sarah Swanson. Speaking of future Hall of Famers, one of the best female athletes we've ever had in school. So I'll have that linked to the posts on Facebook, and check that one out. It was a great one I did with Sarah. All right, I'm tired of talking about you're probably tired of hearing me talking. So we're going to get to our guests here. Again, I have Scott VanDusseldorp. Scott, welcome again. Let's start like always. Tell us what you're up to these days, your job, family, all that good stuff.
You know, Dan, before I get into that, I want to make sure and say thank you for doing this podcast and for all you're doing for the Sanger Legacy Fund. I mean, this is just awesome. You know, you picking this up and running with it has been amazing for the communities, and you need to know how appreciated it is. It's been awesome. I've watched a lot of your episodes, and they're really good. You do a great job.
Yeah, thank you.
As far as my family's concerned, I teach at Garner Hayfield Ventura. I'm a high school science teacher. This is my 19th year teaching, I believe. Before that, I was a respiratory therapist. I'm married. I've been married for 31 years. My wife, Angie, is a pharmacist. I have 4 children. My oldest son, Jack, is 24 years old. Kale, and he teaches at Newman as a middle school reading teacher. Kale would be 22 years old today. Rafe is 20, and he's at Waldorf. And Emily, my youngest, is 18, and she's also at Waldorf.
Nice. So you guys are empty nesters as of this last spring.
Yeah, sort of. I mean, Rafe and Emily still live at home, and they commute to Waldorf.
Okay.
And you know, Jack lives in town with his wife and my granddaughter, so they're close.
Nice. And how do you go from a respiratory therapist to a high school science teacher? How'd that go?
Well, part of my job as I was working as a respiratory therapist, as I moved up, they gave me more and more responsibility with doing teaching of new respiratory therapists. And then I took a job at Albert Lee Medical Center in staff development and education, teaching new employees. And I just really enjoyed the teaching aspect of it. So I talked it over with my wife, and she gave me the go ahead, and I went back to school to get my teaching degree.
Nice. Where'd you go to school to get that?
For my teaching endorsement, I went through Buena Vista.
Okay, nice. That's my wife did that as well. She went and through Ottumwa, so I'm sure you didn't go down to Ottumwa, but they have campuses all over, don't they?
Yes, I went through Mason City. They have a campus at Mason City.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. I went to Nyack for a year, and I totally forgot they do have a campus there. So how'd you end up in Garner? Was that just where the job was? Were you guys already living there at the time?
We were already living there. My wife is originally from Garner. And so that was, you know, one of the things we decided after we got done with school, because we got married after my first year of college. And so we were down there in college together, and then decided that, you know, when the time was right, we wanted to be closer to family. And so this is where we ended up.
Nice. Yep. That's 10 minutes from where you grew up, and you still have friends over there and some family, I'm sure. So that's always nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
we talked about this on text. I'm not gonna not be able to tease you a little bit about the whole Garner Britt thing. So that's coming a little bit, but all in good fun, of course. So
Absolutely.
this is primarily going to be a football episode. What you're maybe most known for as a former athlete. According to Coach Gene Perkins, talked to several years ago, I asked, who are some of the best defensive players you ever coached? And he goes, well, a lot of them came from the couple years all together. And your name was mixed in there with some others, Rick Sanger, Travis Hagan, and then you, of course. You played for Coach Bob Sanger and Coach Gene Perkins from 1987 through 1990. Your first 2 years of high school was just Britt, and then the last two is when it became West Hancock. What do you remember about that merger between Britt and Kanawha? I've asked several other guests this and gotten a lot of the same answers, but I always like to hear everybody's take on that.
Originally, right when it first started off, of course, everybody wants to stay who they are, so when it first happened, we were all a little leery, but as soon as they showed up, it was a great match. It really was. Some of my best friends are from Kanawha. Tim Raber was a groomsman in my wedding, and he's a Kanawha boy. So, as soon as they came over, we seemed to match pretty well. Everybody seemed to work in together, and by about a month into school, you didn't know who was from Kanawha, who was from Britt. It was just all West Hancock at that point.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've heard from everybody. It was a smooth transition, and I'm a teacher too, and you always hear about school consolidations, and what you always hear is the kids do well with it. It's the adults that sometimes struggle and don't want to give up that identity, don't want to give into this, don't want to lose this, and the kids are the ones that are like, we're fine, like we're good. So
yeah, absolutely.
Your 4 years of our football at West Hancock and Britt, and I know especially back then, but even still to this day, freshmen don't typically play varsity, but I am lumping in the 4 seasons you were in high school, how the varsity did. 32-8 overall, 2 conference titles, um, 2 conference runner-up teams, 3 trips to the playoffs. Your freshman season went to the state title game in '87. Your sophomore year, when you started playing, having a role on the varsity, you guys made the semifinals, missed the playoffs in '89, that first year of the merger, and then in 1990, you guys made it to the playoffs but lost in the first round. So, what do you remember about those last 2 years of Britt football, going to the Dome for a championship game and then a semifinal game?
Those they were amazing. I mean, some of the guys that we were playing with, truly great football players, and great leaders. My freshman year, there was, I believe, 4 of us that dressed varsity the last regular season game, and then through the playoffs. And that, quite honestly, is really what drew me into football. It was my freshman year. Coming into freshman year, I had big plans about what I was going to do in wrestling. Football was just something I was going to do in the fall. But that freshman year, having Coach Sanger, Coach Perkins, and the guys that I was around really turned me on to football. I really fell in love with the game. And then getting a dress was, definitely an honor, because it still is, not easy to dress as a freshman. Back then, it was really hard to get a dress as a freshman or play anything as a freshman. So I really took it as an honor to even be on the field with those guys. And I got in one play in one of the playoffs, and tell you what, I was hooked at that point. Sophomore year, again, that would be Kevin Sanger and Greg Byers' senior year, and those guys were just amazing leaders, and kind of took us all under their wing, and it was just great. It was a fantastic time.
Yeah, I had the honor of dressing as a sophomore in 2002. There was like 4 of us that did, and then a couple more did for the playoffs. And I got into the game, and I kind of agree with you. I was hooked, like, oh, I want to get better at this. One thing I noticed, these guys are fast. That was my biggest takeaway. I got in the game, and I'm like, normally in a JV game you'd make that tackle, but they went right past you in a varsity game. Like, oh, this is a little bit different. But man, that experience, bigger crowd, better competition. It was, yeah, I get it. So your last 2 years, 1989 and 90, like I said, were the first 2 years of West Hancock football. You can't not talk about defense when you talk about these teams, the 89, 90, and 91 teams in particular. In '89, yeah, you guys only played 8 games because you didn't make the playoffs, but you only gave up 66 points in those 8 games. Quick run through here. You beat Rockford 33-0. Lost to Osage 7-0. It's one of those things, you give up 7 points, you should win, but it was just a defensive game. Lost to Forest City 26-20. Beat Lake Mills on the road 14-8. Beat Garner at home 37-7. Beat North Iowa 21-18 on the road. At home, you beat Northwood 33-0, and then blanked Belmont Clemmy 47-0 on the road in that season. I've talked to several other guys about this 89 season. First year combining with Kanawha and then not making the playoffs that year. How tough was that to be left at home for that postseason run?
That it was real tough to take, considering the tradition that had already been started before us, was, to be honest with you, I was pretty embarrassed. When you're following some of the guys that we followed and then we kind of dropped the ball on it, it was definitely disappointing. And quite honestly, we were a team that belonged in the playoffs that year. We were a pretty decent football team that year. The biggest thing was, Osage beat us 7-0. I mean, that's just what it is. The Forest City game, we were up until the very end of the game, and then suddenly Forest City just knocked out, I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 scores to just beat us right at the end. So it was one of those things where, we probably shouldn't have lost that game, but it's our job to finish the game too, and we weren't able to do it. If that would happen, we would have made the playoffs, and I think we would have had a decent run in the playoffs. So like I said, that team was pretty good. The seniors that year, you had Rick Whipple and Steve Kelly and some of those guys. There were some really good leaders, and like I said, I just think we were better than a team that didn't make the playoffs.
Yeah, and the playoff system, I'm not making excuses, obviously, but the playoff system was so different back then. It was still conference play. So, like, yeah, we were bigger at the time. We jumped up to 2A because we added Kanawha in. But Osage was like a fairly good sized 3A school, and so was Forest City back then. So, like, you could be a 1A school like we were, and like North Iowa was going to be. I think Northwood was a 1A school at the time. Your season in the postseason could, or your chances of making the postseason could be affected by losing to teams that are 2 or 3 times bigger than you, which some people hated the new district system in '92, but I thought it was smart. I was too young to really know what was going on back then. But looking back, why wouldn't you play teams your size to make the playoffs to compete against teams your size? You were playing teams twice as big as you, and if you lost that game, you didn't make the playoffs. That never made a lot of sense to me, but yeah.
Sure. And in all honesty, it also wasn't fair to the bigger schools. Like a Forest City being 3A or Osage, if they lost to, a West Hancock, they're essentially already out because you lost so many points by losing to a school that was that much smaller than you. So it hurt everybody.
Yeah. So they've made some good strides over the years. Your senior year, 1990, again, 66 points given up, and you're playing bigger schools and still not giving up much against them. At Rockford, won 55-0, blanked Belmont 33-0, then Osage 34-0. So the first 3 games were shutouts. What was the difference between losing to Osage 7-0, then beating them 34-0 the following year?
I think that a lot of us, it finally started to kick in that this is our last chance. And, we were, like I said, we were pretty embarrassed about the year before, the fact that we didn't make the playoffs, and we let everybody down. So we were pretty determined that we were going to be a little bit better that year. We were going to be a little more focused.
Yep. Continuing on here, another revenge game at Forest City. You beat them 42-13 after that 26-20 loss. Beat Lake Mills 28-6. And I hate to bring this up, but Garner got you guys in Garner that year, 19-8. What do you remember about that Garner loss?
They definitely had some good athletes. They had Ryan Backey, who is in many of the state record books. He's a very good running back. They had a really good offensive line. And they just came a little bit more ready than we did. If we played them, 10 times, I think we probably would have won 9 out of those 10 times. But that just happened to be the time. So it is what it is. But it might have been needed. I think maybe we were getting a little big for our britches at the time. We thought we might have been a little bit better than we were. So maybe we needed something to kind of make us wake up and realize that we need to come at every game, 100% intent on winning.
Yeah. And then your last 3 games, you had the same opponent twice. North Iowa, Buffalo Center. October 19th, 1990, at home, you beat North Iowa 26-15. And in between a playoff game with the Bison, you went on the road to Northwood and won that one 41-0 for another shutout. And then on Halloween, you guys first round of the playoffs had to go to Buffalo Center, even though you beat them in the regular season, and had to play Don Anderson is a good friend of my dad's, and I know you know Don through all the coaching circles. Don had some solid teams back in the day for Thompson and then for North Iowa. He came back and coached my brother's team in 2010 to 2012. They got you guys in the first round. You're back in the playoffs, which was good. There's a trophy in the case now for that year, but 13-12 loss. Talk about that game a little bit. Your last game.
First half, I felt like we played pretty well. I think we went in halftime. I believe it was like 12-0. We were up. Second half, things just didn't go our way. They started being able to connect on some passes. They weren't able to move the ball real well running against us, but then they started throwing and started finding their receivers, and we just weren't covering it up like we were supposed to. And it seemed like anything that could go bad did. There at the end of the game, we had a chance to win it, and we went to stop the clock by spiking the ball, and we ended up throwing it to the side instead. So they called it intentional grounding as opposed to spiking it. So then the clock would start as soon as we got ready to try to kick a field goal. Rick Sanger was set up to kick a field goal, and time just ran out before we were able to snap the ball to try to win the game.
Do you remember how Coach Sanger responded to that? Was he upset with the officials at all? Was it the right call? Obviously never seen the video of it. What do you remember?
Well, looking back at it, it probably was the right call. But, of course, in the moment, to me, it definitely wasn't the right call. Yeah. But, we did turn and throw the ball as opposed to throwing it straight down at the ground, so, but then if you call intentional grounding, we did have, our tight end sitting over there. Granted, he was still in the stance, but he was over there. So, I don't know. I think to me, to have that completely decide the outcome of the game is kind of tough to take. Yeah. Coach Sanger, tried to talk it over with the refs, but it is what it is. It happened, and I suppose, like I said, technically that probably was the right call, but it's kind of hard to take that's what ended the game and kept the team from moving on.
Definitely. Talk about Don Anderson a little bit. How did you get to know him over the years coaching at Garner, him being around the area?
I knew him a little bit. I'd see him at coaching clinics. We were never in the same district, so I didn't get to be around him at like district meetings and that kind of stuff. But everything I knew of him, definitely a classy guy. Was a good football coach. He did the right things as far as I'm concerned, as far as coaching and how he tried to lead his teams. Definitely was most interested in doing the right thing by his athletes. So yeah, I have nothing but respect for him.
And he won't unfortunately go down as an all-time coach because of never won a championship, didn't get to the Dome, but and I know him very well, so I feel like I can say this in that regard, not sound disrespectful. He went to different programs that were down, and he built them up to beyond respectable very quickly. Rockwell City, Lytton, North Iowa twice. Iowa Falls was pretty down at the time when he took over, and he got them up. So his record may not be the greatest. Maybe he didn't get to the Dome or whatever, but man, he took programs that were just hapless and turned them into fairly consistent winners in a pretty quick manner. So I always had a lot of respect for Don, willing to jump into those rebuild programs. So talk about your coaches, though. You had obviously Bob Sanger, you had Gene Perkins. What did it mean for you to wear that red and white mesh jersey that we still really haven't moved on from, as people were joking about this postseason? They're like, why is this team going for championships and they still wear practice jerseys from 1990? What did it mean to you to play for those guys and to play for Britt and West Hancock?
I have nothing but respect for Coach Sanger and Coach Perkins. They are two of the best coaches probably in the entire country, and I don't think that I'm out of bounds by saying that. Two amazing coaches, and it was just an honor to be coached by them. At the time you don't realize it because you don't know what anything else in the world is like. But when you play for them, it's truly a different experience. And I wouldn't change where I grew up for anything in the world. I had an amazing, childhood, and my high school days are just unreal. I sit and I tell my sons about, some of the stuff that I did in high school and some of the things that I experienced, and those experiences is something that I will never forget and I'll always cherish. Um, you know, Playing at West Hancock taught me a lot about, how to be a man, and how to do the right things for my family and for my children. So it was more than just football. They taught you about life, and how to be a real man, and take care of the things that you're supposed to take care of. So it was just an awesome experience to be able to have the honor of playing for those guys.
And Coach Perkins, people tend to forget this. He was a head coach himself before he came to Britt, back in the 60s and early 70s. And he easily could have been a head coach and had just as many accolades wherever he would have been, but chose to stay in Britt and work with Coach Sanger. And he's, a 2016 Hall of Famer, as essentially an assistant coach. That just speaks volumes. Who were the other assistant coaches on the team besides Coach Perkins when you played?
There was, let's see, Coach Evans, Coach Timmerman, um, Bill Burns was there maybe my freshman sophomore year. He's been a long time coach in Lake Mills now. Let's see, who else would have been there? Oh, Coach Preen. He was one of the assistant wrestling coaches. He was there a couple years when I was there. But yeah, that was mainly the guys that were there when I was in high school.
Yeah, and I'm always intrigued by like the era of Bob Sanger. Like when I played for him in the early 2000s, he was the legend, like the guy that like you were scared of as a kid because you were just like, that's him, like not in a bad way, but like there's just that aura around him. And I know by the time you got there in 87, he had already won a state title in 73, playoffs in 84, 85, 86. So it was, there's like what, 5 playoff appearances. So already very successful at that point, but different from when I played, where it was already like this guy has won 2 titles, like playoffs every year. People just around the state know him. What was he like compared to maybe in his later years when I was in school?
I think I think that in all honesty, he was probably pretty close to the same. Coach Sanger was Coach Sanger, and he had definite beliefs in the way things should be done, both on the football field and in the classroom, and out in the community. So I don't know that changed that much. He might have been a little more fiery, when we were young, when I was in high school, as opposed to maybe when you were in high school. There was a couple of times after maybe we didn't play so well that he let us know about it. But other than that, I think probably his style and the way he wanted to connect with young men, never changed. I think that's always been the same, and I think that's one of the main reasons why he's had so much success, is just the way that he was able to deal with young people, that really made it so everybody believed in him. And so you're going to play a little bit harder, and you can do the right things, because if for nothing else, you didn't want to disappoint him.
Yep, definitely. All right, I'm going to get to the part here where my guests don't really love this part, but I'm going to throw some statistics and accolades your way, and then you're going to deflect it off to all your teammates. That's what everybody does, and I always joke about. But you got some pretty impressive stats here, and we'll get back to Coach Sanger when we get to your coaching career at GH and GHV. So, in the record book for football, most seasons with 50 or more tackles, you are tied for second all time. You did that in 3 seasons. Only 3 players have done that 4 times, and you and about 10 other guys are on that list for 3 seasons. I also have a category most seasons with 75 or more tackles. The record is 3. Nick Horseman, Tate Hagan, and Matthew Francis. You're on that list with 2 seasons with about 15 guys. Most seasons with 100 tackles. Jeff Sanger, Corey Mattoon, Mark Sanger, Nick Horseman, and Ryland Barnes did that twice. You and Matthew Francis, and now Brady Bixel, who's a junior on this year's state title team, did it once. So only like 7 guys have ever recorded 100 plus tackles in a season. Most tackles in a career. You are 10th all time in career tackles, and you haven't played for 32 seasons. So to still be that high on that list is pretty impressive. You had 258 career tackles. Nick Horseman has the school record with 375, and then all the players in between Nick and you: Matthew Francis, Jordan Weiland, Mark Sanger, Zach Schlugger, Corey Mattoon, Jeff Sanger, Ryland Barnes, and Mitch Horseman. So that's pretty elite company. And right below you in 11th place would be a buddy of yours and a classmate of yours, Travis Hagen's son Tate, who played on that 2019 state title team. Most fumble recoveries in a career, you have 6, which is tied for 7th place. Nick Horseman has that record with 12 as well. So obviously these are all defensive stats. You were a lineman offensively, so the stats you were going to accumulate were defensively, and I'd say you made the most of them. But between you, Travis Hagen, Rick Sanger, some of those other guys, like I said, that defense was pretty stout. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think we had a lot of players that did, a phenomenal job, and just to be able to play with those guys was great. And you talk about some of those things, and the thing is, though, it's easy to make tackles when everybody has to worry about blocking somebody else. When you have to worry about trying to block Travis, who was so stinking quick at nose, and you had to worry about blocking our ends, and it's easy because that takes up blockers, and when that takes up blockers, well, I better make a tackle. It wasn't anything to do with me. It was the fact that I was the only one that wasn't blocked. So it makes it a little bit easier to make those tackles when you're surrounded by guys that everybody has to worry about.
I'm gonna disagree a little bit, because I was a defensive lineman, and my senior year, my last game, we're playing Janesville, no playoffs that year. And Coach Sanger says, "You 4 captains," it was Chad Eisman, Nick Hartman, Justin Johnson, me, "you guys go out there, play whatever position you want for like 2 plays." They all wanted to play D line, and I decided to play middle linebacker for 1 play. And running back gets the ball right up the middle towards me, and all I have to do is like make a tackle, and he like turned his head a quarter turn this way, and I juked and went that way and fell, and he went right past me. I'm like, linebacker is not an easy thing. So I'm gonna disagree a little bit, because I was like, I was way out of my element there. I couldn't make those reads. I need to be that lineman that just shot left or shot right and made a pile, because that, oh man. But you guys had a pretty stout defense. You were a 3-time all-conference player, and back before 92, it was conference. 92 through present day is district. But either way, between conference and district, only 30 players in school history have been 3-time all-conference or district, and only 2 others were 4-timers. You were also a 2-time all-stater. Only 27 other West Hancock Britt football players made the all-state team twice, and 2 or 3-timers. So pretty elite company to be in, literally a group of maybe about 25 guys. What about after high school? Did you end up playing ball somewhere after high school?
Yeah, I went to Dana, which is a Division II school in Blair, Nebraska.
Yep.
Dana no longer exists, by the way. They've closed up. But by the time I got there, I was there with an independent major, because they didn't have my major. To be honest, I was there to play football. Yeah. And by the time I got there, I'd already had 4 knee surgeries. And the third day of 2 days, I blew my knee again. And at that point, it finally sunk in that maybe I need to get an education. And so before the school year started, I transferred and ended up going to Nyack for a year, and then they moved on from there. So no, I didn't actually play a single down in college. Like I said, third day of 2 days, I was able to make contact with the person once. The rest of it was non-contact drills, and blew out my knee in a non-contact, just getting into my flats, working on pass coverage, and that was the end of it.
Any regrets not trying, or are you like, that was meant to be type of thing?
Yeah, definitely regrets for not trying. Back then, if you tore an ACL, it was pretty much done. You weren't going to play anymore. Where I tore my ACL my sophomore year in high school, and I continued to play through the rest of the time. Then when I did it again, the doctors told me that it probably not a wise move. Now you can probably get away with it and keep trying, because I think their techniques are so much better now that you're able to come back from some of that stuff. But yeah, I definitely wish I would have tried it again. and I also wish that maybe I would have chose someplace else to go because I had some other offers. Um, some offers that I didn't think were as good as I wanted them to be. So I ended up choosing to go to Dana, and not that Dana would have been a bad school or a bad place, and I probably would have torn my knee regardless of where I went. But maybe try it again and try it somewhere else would have been a good thing.
Yeah.
But it worked out. I ended up at the end of that year, I got married, and luckily she said yes, and so I've been married now 31, almost 32 years, and so it worked out for the best.
Yep, definitely. Any issues with your knees to this day, or are they?
Yeah, I mean, I still have problems with it. I've had seven surgeries on them so far. Um, but I'm still able to walk, and haven't had that replacement yet. I'm sure that's on the horizon, but right now everything is going well. I still am able to get on the treadmill. I'm still able to walk around and do some things. I can't run like I used to, but I am 50, so I probably won't be able to run that well anyway.
Yeah, running's overrated.
Absolutely, absolutely,
I'd rather walk 20 miles than run one, is what I always say. So
definitely,
as
definitely.
long as you can still get out and do stuff.
Yep.
So you ended up in Garner, and I'm sure no one's given you a hard time about that over the years, right? Started as an assistant coach on the football team in 2002, which would have been my sophomore year in high school. After 2 years as an assistant, you became the D coordinator, which would have been my senior year in 04. So your first game as D coordinator was against West Hancock. Uh, Talk about that a little bit. What was that like for you to go against Bob Sanger? And that was the year Gene Perkins came back. He had been out for a handful of years. Talk about coaching against Wes Hancock in you had a more prominent role on the team that year.
Yeah, it was definitely different. If my memory served me right, that was also the year that they dedicated the football field to Coach Sanger. I believe they named.
2002 was the year
Okay,
they dedicated it.
okay.
Yep.
So my
And
first year is
yep.
go ahead.
Yeah, yep. You would have been they didn't do it during the game, but they did it the week before at the scrimmage, the pop scrimmage,
Okay,
whatever we called it. But yep. And then
okay. So
yep.
yeah, standing on the field definitely looks different when you're standing on the other side of the field. It looks like a totally different football field when you're standing on the east side as opposed to on the west side. So it was definitely different looking across at two of my two of the gods of football were across the field from me, and so it was definitely definitely a difficult time. It was bittersweet to be able to be considered you know um, a coach like they were considered, well, not like they were considered coaches, but a coach like they are. But yet in the same respect, that's my hometown, and that's the team that I bled for. And so, it was definitely a different situation.
Yeah. And like I said, that 04 game was my senior season. 02, my sophomore year, we won that game 13-12. You had the big dude who played at Iowa Cook, right?
Yeah.
Brandon
Yep.
Brandon
Brandon.
Cook. Yep, he was a horse. But we got you on a 2-point conversion try at the end of that game. 2003, my junior season, was a 21-0 West Hancock win. I think that was the game we only had like 90 yards of offense, but had, I think, a pick six, a fumble recovery. It was just some weird stuff. And then 04, it was a close game at halftime, and we kind of took over in the second half. Um, so you're on the other sideline. Can you still hear Ann Hagen in the crowd?
You absolutely can. You absolutely can. In fact, I went to a game or this last fall, and it just brings back. You just go right back in time to being in high school because you can hear Ann out there, and yeah, you can definitely hear it when you're on the other side on the other sideline.
You can hear it on the live stream too if you watch the KIOW feed. She's top row, about where the camera is, and you can always hear her yelling at the defense. So,
You want to
yep,
talk about a super fan?
yep, definitely. I have several conversations with Ann. She's on the Hall of Fame committee and does a great job helping with that. And all things Wes Hancock. Ann's pretty awesome. So, um, 2005, you got your first win against Wes Hancock, 26-21 in Britt. Then you guys didn't play in 06 or 07. And then ever since 2008, you guys have played each other in your career and past when you're done coaching football. You guys won 3 straight against Coach Sanger, 08, 09, and 2010. You guys made the playoffs in 2008 in Class 1A, lost to Gladbrook Rhinebeck 12-0. A couple years again, beating West Hancock, and then you took over as the head coach in 2011. What led to you getting the nod as the guy?
Our head coach Cam Smith got a job as a principal, and so he moved away, and I'd been with the program at that point for quite a number of years, and so I was able to move up into the head coaching position. So it just worked out.
When did Winkowicz leave for West Delaware? Do you remember what year that would have been?
Yeah, his first year at West Delaware would have been 2004. So the first year I became D coordinator, it
That
was
was
the first year he was gone. Yeah.
okay. I had it in my head that he was still coaching when I was playing, but my senior year. But and he's had a lot of success down at West Delaware. He's had a nice program. Is he still the head man there?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
He is.
Do
He
you keep
is.
in contact with him at all?
Not as much, as time moves on, the time in between starts spreading out. And then when I got out of coaching, you don't go to some of the places that you would normally see some of the people at. And so yeah, we haven't talked now for a while, but yeah, I know he's still there. And he is definitely having some success there. It's another place that, definitely has a desire to win, and the situation's right where the kids want to get after it, and so he's definitely had some success.
Yeah. When I was helping coach at Central, we had some West Delaware kids, and they always spoke very highly of him. I'd talk about the connection from where I played, where he was coaching, and then a friend of ours from church, a good friend of my wife, she's a West Delaware grad, and she speaks very, very highly of him. So always like to give shout out to coaches that deserve it. That's for sure. So you were the head coach from 2011 through 2018. Accumulated an overall record of 41-35 with 3 trips to the playoffs. Not I talked about 08 when you guys lost to Gladbrook. That was when you were a coordinator. So you have 3 trips to the playoffs as a head coach. 2011, you guys were 4-5. 2012, you guys were 7-4. You guys were up in 2A at this point, and man, when you get sometimes into those 2A playoffs and you have to go out west, kind of northwest Iowa, you run into some dogs out there. Central Lyon, George Little Rock, you guys beat 30-6 in the first round, and then had to go to Boyden Hall Rock Valley. You had to talk about those 2 schools and like West Lyon, and those are just some knockdown, drag it out type of teams over there. Lost to them in the second round. 2013, you guys made it back to the playoffs with a 7-3 record overall. Had to go to BHRV again and lost to them 34-13. Talk about those first 3 years getting to the playoffs a couple times and getting a playoff win.
Yeah, the first year that I was a head coach, I kept the same offense that the previous head coach had. We had a quarterback that was had a lot of he was in the record books throughout the state as a quarterback. He threw the ball really well. He was really quick. So I didn't want to change things up on him his senior year. And I didn't want to make a whole bunch of quick changes on the kids because, that's just not something that would have been very smart to do. And so that first year we ran the previous head coach's offense, so it was kind of we ran spread, we threw the ball all over the place. We probably threw, 80% of the time. And so that first year, that's kind of how that worked. By the second year, though, I was able to make the change over to the kind of offense that I wanted to run. And so, then when you go from running spread to running, 3 yards in a cloud of dust type of deal, it takes a little adjustment on the kids' part. The offensive line's totally different than what they're used to. So, there was some adjustment there, but then things started going okay there for a while. The kids started, figuring it out, and I was definitely trying to get the program to move in that type of direction.
Was it a wing tee that you ran, or what variation of the ground and pound did you guys run?
It was kind of a wing tee. I mean, it was a lot of the wing tee principles, but I ran some eye and I ran a little bit of wishbone, but the principles were all the same. The blocking schemes were the same. The movement in the backfield was pretty similar, but it wasn't necessarily wing tee.
Were you a little nervous to maybe implement something like that with people going, oh, he's just doing what they did where he was from, or was you just thinking what's best for the program, honestly?
Well, I was thinking what's best for the program. When you're in a small town, in order to sling the ball over the place, you have to have so many things happen all at once in order for that to be successful. I mean, there's years where maybe you have a great quarterback, but your line isn't built for that, or you don't have the receivers for it. And others year you might have a receiver, but you don't have the quarterback that can run it. It's hard to run that kind of an offense. When it's a smash mouth type of football, it's a little bit easier if you can get the kids to buy into hitting somebody. It's a little bit easier to get that to run. And plus, to be honest with you, I wanted that type of offense. I loved the way that Coach Sanger and Coach Perkins did things at West Hancock. I wanted to emulate that. So that was the other thing. Now, it was definitely some hurting as far as some growing pains, because it's more fun for the fans to watch the ball being slung all over the place. It's not necessarily fun for the fans to watch 3 yards every play. So I got a little blowback for that. But then people started realizing, that maybe, we can be successful with that type of a football team. And we had a little bit of success there for a while. And so it worked out. But like I said, there was definitely growing pains early on. Yeah. And then, when I'd be interviewed after games and I'd make comments about how, throwing the ball should be illegal and that kind of stuff, probably didn't help me with my community when I'd mention those types of things. But, it worked out.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at, you said your first year, was it Jace Inksler? He was the quarterback then, right? Yeah,
he was the quarterback in 2011. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you jumped into the 2012 with the new ground and pound offense, you go 7-4, 7-3, 2-7, 7-3, make the playoffs 3 years. So that makes it a little bit easier when the wins are there. A lot of times when you're changing things and you're 3-6, people are like, "Why'd you change things? What are you doing?" But winning 7 games a year and going to the playoffs in Class 2A, it's hard to argue with that. So yeah, 2014, a little bit of a down year, 2-7. 2015, like I said, you were 7-3. Made it back to the playoffs, lost to New Hampton 26-6. And then 2016, you went 6-3. 2017, you went 5-4. And then your last season as a head coach, you were 3-6. Like I said, for a 41-35 overall record, very respectable. 3 trips to the playoffs, very respectable. After losing to Britt in 2011, you guys ripped off 6 straight wins against Coach Sanger and Coach Perkins. We texted about this. I was kind of like, I don't know, how should we approach this for the podcast? Because you have complete respect for the West Hancock program and the coaches, and also you're a Garner guy too. So maybe at first a little bittersweetness when you started getting some wins over Coach, but also a complete respect thing, and the fact that you like you said, you bled for that team for a while. What was it like coaching against Bob?
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head. It definitely was bittersweet. Having some success against West Hancock is obviously it's an honor, because Coach Sanger and Coach Perkins are truly coaching icons. But the thing was, I wanted so bad to build a program that resembled West Hancock's, but you can't duplicate it. Those people who never grew up in Britt or Kanawha really don't have any idea what it's really like. And when you try to duplicate something like that, I wasn't good enough coach to have it happen. I don't know that anybody other than Coach Sanger and Coach Perkins can create that type of program. I tried really, really hard to create that program. But I just wasn't able to accomplish it. The reason that I tried to emulate the program or create the program like theirs was 100% out of respect. Because I wanted to build a program like theirs, because I respected and loved their program so much that I was trying to bring that someplace else and create the same type of thing. And so believe me when I say that I didn't coach at GHV simply because I wanted to disrespect West Hancock and beat West Hancock. That was not the goal. The goal was to try to create the same type of program, because I thought so highly of that program. And some people over the years have understood that, and some hasn't. And but that's the honest to goodness truth. I was trying to build a program like West Hancock's, not to, degrade West Hancock, but to build one like West Hancock, because I had so much respect for those two coaches, But when you go places and you try to do something exactly the same way, you just can't duplicate it, and you can't duplicate the people there. You can't duplicate, the whole system. It just doesn't work, and if you look at things, you take a look at all of North Iowa, and we're a pretty homogenous group. We're all pretty similar genetically. We all come from similar backgrounds. So obviously, it isn't that West Hancock has the market on great genetics. It isn't that West Hancock has these athletes that are just freaks that no one else has. So there's something more there, and that something more you just can't put into words. And like I said before, if you didn't grow up there, you have no idea what it is. I'll just give you an example of that. When I was in high school, to be honest with you, I loved practices. I loved practices so much, but I really didn't love games. The reason I didn't love games is because I was always really, really upset when the game started. I was mad. And the reason I was mad is, I know it's silly looking back at it, but I was mad because I was upset that the other team had the audacity to show up. If they showed up, that means that they thought that they could honestly beat us. And there was no way that anybody was going to beat us. And so I was just mad that they thought they could. And so that type of feeling and that type of internal drive is not something that can be taught. It's something that you have to grow up with, and you have to live through in order to fully understand. And so, just walking into any place and just trying to show up and say, okay, this is the way it's going to be. This is the way you guys need to think. It's much harder than what a person would think it should be, because it definitely is hard. I tried, and it's definitely hard to try to accomplish.
Yeah. I was the head coach at Southeast Warren for 2 years in my early 20s, and I shouldn't have even been the guy for that job, but here's the job, take it. I tried to do a lot of the same things that I grew up knowing, and learned pretty quickly, like, it's not going to work here, which just seems weird. Like, hey, these people have success here. Take what they're doing. I mean, we're teachers. We do that exact thing all the time in the classroom. I went and observed at Norwalk the other day and saw this is what they're doing in their fourth grade math. I'm going to take that successful thing and take it here, and it works. Athletics is a completely different beast. I learned that pretty quick. Like, it's just, there's a lot of other factors that go into it, and it's a weird thing. So
Absolutely.
are you surprised at all? And I know the answer to this question, but like, 2019 state champs, 2020 quarterfinals, probably should have been in the dome that year. 2021 state champs, 2022 runner-ups, 2023 state champs. Coach Sanger's gone, unfortunately. We all miss him terribly. We're in a lucky spot athletically when he was ill, and then when he passed, that Mark was right there to kind of keep things going, along with all the assistant coaches that are all from Britt, except for CJ Camrad, who's a Garner guy, and so you know him. But just very lucky that those people were in place at the time, and it's just continued. Are you surprised at all by that?
No, not at all, because what's been put in place has already been put in place, and who more perfect for that position than Mark to take over? Who would know how things are more than one of the Sanger boys? So Mark was a perfect candidate to take that over and just continue to roll with it. And since it was put in place, he was able to continue to build on it and continue for it to grow. And he's done a phenomenal job with it. And he's got great assistant coaches that have stepped in and done what they're supposed to do. And that I don't foresee anything really changing in that, because of the expectations and the culture that is found at West Hancock. Unless one of those things changes, success breeds success. And so I think it will continue. Now, will they have years where they won't be state champs? Absolutely, but success breeds success, and it'll keep rolling.
Yeah, and at a school our size, I mean, we're 8-man size right now, playing up in Class A. Talent should be cyclical. Like, I've mentioned this many times on the podcast. My brother coaches at North Iowa. He graduated from there. He was a part of that, like, every 30-year class at Buffalo Center that went to state in basketball. They went to state in football a few times. kids won state titles in track. He went to state golf. They had a solid baseball team. And then they've had a lot of down years since. And they'll have a little bit of an up year and then some down years. He goes, how does a school literally like Britt's size, that's not that much bigger than North Iowa, how are they always good? Girls and boys basketball have been to state. Wrestling's been in the top 10. Football obviously is really good. We've had track state titles. How? And I'm just like, it's just a culture thing. It's just like you said, success breeds success, and that next group wants to keep it going. I've heard some people already saying, yeah, we won state in 2023, but next year's group's not going to be as good. And I'm like, I think they're going to be really, really good. Like I with what they have coming back and the kids that have been waiting their turn, they look to me just like they did as freshmen and sophomore than these seniors did when they were freshmen and sophomores. It's just mind blowing to a degree, but it's just kind of the reality, and it's hard to explain to people not in it, like you were saying. So
Yeah, it's not about that they ever need to really rebuild. They just reload. Every year since they won in 2019, I've heard people, in fact, I've said this, that, next year may be a little bit of a down year. And then what happens the next year? They go to the finals, So it's just one of those things that you have to nail on the head. It's the culture. The culture is what really makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to talk a little bit about that culture of the Britt and West Hancock communities here. Kind of a tough subject, but while Coach Sanger was going through his battle with cancer in 2019, your family was also going through something very similar. Your son Cale passed away early October of 2019, just 17 years old, had a short battle with cancer. Today would have been his birthday. Talk about that a little bit if you can, and what the communities of Garner, Hayfield, and Ventura, and then Britt and Kanawha and West Hancock meant to you guys going through what you went through.
Yeah. End of September of 2019, my son, was pretty tired, and so he wasn't feeling very good. So we were at school one day and he said, he didn't feel good, wanted to go home. So I let him. And then the next day he did the same thing. And well, Cale at the time, didn't mind school, but if he could stay home, he'd much rather stay home. So I said, all right, but if you don't want to go to school tomorrow, then you need to go see a doctor. We need to take you to the doctor because we need to see what's going to happen. And because I figured that would make him go to school the next day because he didn't like the doctor either. Well, the next day he didn't feel good, so we took him to the doctor, and take him to the doctor, and they sent us home saying that he had mono. And when I got home, the doctor here in town called him and said, hey, what they find out about him? And they I told her that they thought he had mono. She said, nah, you need to take him back because I think it's more than that. So we took him back the next day, and that's we found out he had cancer. So we ran up to Mayo and had some things done, and found out that he had 3 different types of cancer. And it was, there's some in his spleen, some in his liver, some in his heart. But the main one was he had a 4-inch mass in his chest. And so, we were looking at different possibilities for how we were going to take care of that. And he went up and had, some ports put in so that way he could have his chemotherapy. And we got home and got back here to Garner. And, a couple days later, he wasn't looking real good. So we took him in, and well, his spleen had burst. And so that was kind of where things went from there. And he ended up getting life flighted up to Mayo. And about a week later, he was no longer with us. Obviously horrible time in my family's life, but we were able to get through it a lot because of all the support that we had. A lot of the surrounding communities did a lot for us as far as showing their support for us. Coach Sanger called me up and we had a long talk, which he wasn't feeling real well himself. He was fighting things himself, but he felt it was necessary to call me up and talk about things. And so we had an amazing talk. And then at Cale's visitation, the West Hancock football team came to his visitation and brought a signed helmet. It's one of those things where, yeah, I went to school with some of their dads, but really they didn't know me that well. But yet they still felt it was the right thing to do to come and talk to me and talk to my family. that really shows that, how important it is that, you know, where you came from, and that how tight your community is. I've often said this to my wife when she would say different things about the way I was doing something, and she, my response to her would always be, you can take the Brit out of boy out of Brit, but you can't take the Brit out of the boy. And that's kind of what the deal is there. I may not live in Brit anymore. I may not be, coaching at West Hancock, but it's still my hometown. That's still my community, and they still showed love and respect when I needed it the most. So that was unbelievably huge for me and for my family. Just to know that those people still cared about me. Not that I didn't get any love from Garner, because I did. But West Hancock didn't need to do that. I'm not from Brit anymore. I don't live there anymore. But they did, and they felt the closeness because of the fact that I am from there, and once an eagle, always an eagle type of a mentality. And so it was just the connection I had with those people and the support that they gave my family, will never be forgotten. And there's no way for me to go around and thank every single one of them. So I'm happy that, you're giving me this opportunity right now to do that, because I can't thank those people enough. They have no idea what that meant to me. So, again, I just want to thank them, and thank you for letting me talk about this. Obviously it's not easy. Today is Kale's birthday. But I felt like it was necessary that I talk about some of this today.
Definitely. I, hard to segue from that. I just, I got 2 9-year-olds in the house right now. We're stuck in a snowstorm, and I just can't imagine. So you have our condolences still. And I didn't know you until just recently when I said, hey, do you want to do a podcast with me? And then we've just been texting back and forth. But I do remember when Kale passed, just seeing the outpouring of support, on Facebook and stuff, and hearing, talking to people and stuff. It's just, yeah, it didn't surprise me one bit that the Britt and Kanawha, West Hancock communities jumped right in to support and help however that was needed. That's just the way it is, and that's pretty cool. It's not something you get in a big town in the cities or whatever. It's people look out for each other in those small towns, and we're no exceptions. So it's commendable of the people. And again, I just can't imagine, and be a tough deal. So we're going to wrap this up here. My next 5 podcasts coming up: Gerardo Ibarra, Jordan Weiland, Kevin Eisman, who you went to school with, the 2016 Girls State Championship track team, and then Dave and Cliff Howlett, a couple outstanding wrestlers from back in the 70s. I'm going to reiterate it one more time. This was episode 100, so I'm doing a little giving drive where I guess that you give $100 to the Legacy Fund, and let me know if you do, so I can keep a tally of how close do we get to that $5,000 goal. All the things you heard Scott talk about today with Coach Sanger, and just in the last few minutes, that all the things he did for us, all the things Linda has done for us and continues to do. That'd be really neat to spearhead 2024 in the Legacy Fund with a large financial chunk of money to keep the Legacy Fund going. We have some big plans with the Legacy Fund, and a lot of things we want to do, and of course everything takes money, and we want to continue to keep that legacy of the Sangers afloat and going. So if you want to do that, let me know. I'm going to share my screen here really fast. I'm not terribly techy with some of this, but I tend to figure it out. This is sangerstrong.com, the Bob and Linda Sanger Legacy Fund. Really easy to give. You can click donate now, and it takes you to the Mankato Area Foundation. Don't be scared when you see that. You're like, that's Minnesota. What the heck is that? That's where we house the fund. You put in the amount you want to give, if you want to do the 100 or whatever. And then it literally it walks you through it. And it's a very simple, easy way to give. You can get a tax write-off for that as well. If you want to learn more about the Legacy Fund, I'm kind of just scrolling through here quickly. Some of the initiatives that we've given to, some of the future things. Here are the board members. One of my most proud things that I get to be a part of is being a part of this Legacy Fund. I've gotten to be friends with all the Sangers over this, and just deeply honored that I get to be a part of something that has the name Sanger attached to it. So, goal is $5,000 by March 1st. If you're inclined to do so, again, you can give at sangerstrong.com here. Let me know that you did, because I want to keep track and see how close we get to that $5,000. So, Coach V, any last minute? I always, when I'm talking, sometimes at the end, some people think, oh, I forgot about this or this person or that or one other story or whatever. But last chance here, anything that's coming to your mind before we sign off?
Not really, other than I just want to thank you again for letting me be on here today, and thank you for all you're doing with the Sanger Legacy Fund, and please continue doing these podcasts because they're amazing. And so keep doing them.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you very much. All right, and go Eagles.